Hello, everybody. Let's start. My name is Emiliano Conde. Welcome to this webinar. I'm president of J Billing, and I have today with me, although not physically, I'm in Ottawa. I have with me in Vancouver Matt Gibson. Hi, Matt.
Hello, Emiliano, and pleased to be here.
How are you today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And I'm glad to see we have a number of people with us to talk about PCI.
That's right, and I actually want to congratulate those that have joined today because this is not the kind of topic that you look forward to entertain yourself. It's the kind of topic actually that people do not want to know about. They want to ignore it and pretend that it doesn't exist. And I have to kind of admit that we had that problem many years ago in J Billing. It looked such a big problem, and not the kind of thing that it's fun to tackle. It's costly, it's difficult, it's all about security. So great that many people are joining us. Um, I want to give some context. Matt has worked around PCI for a couple of years already, mostly with J Billing. He led many projects to from being not PCI to being PCI, and this is not just a matter of JBilling as a billing system being PCI, but there's a number of other areas around. So I'm with good company today, and
Oh, pleased to be here too. Yeah.
great, Matt. So let me start with the most simple of all questions. Why is it that we need to care about PCI?
Well, PCI matters because, well, first and foremost, it's mandatory for any organization that stores or processes or transmits credit card data. So there is that requirement that we have with our in our merchant services agreements that we need to comply with. But I think that that might be the wrong approach and the wrong perspective on this. I think it's more important to realize that PCI standard is really about making sure that your systems are secure so that your customers can have
Mhm.
confidence providing their payment card information to you.
Right.
It's peace of mind and security.
So you would go ahead and do this PCI compliance even if you were not forced to be PCI compliant. Is that your take?
Yeah, it really is. Honestly, you think, oh, why would I expend extra money and time and effort to comply to something I don't need to? Well, even if it was an optional requirement, the point is that PCI is about ensuring your systems are secure, and we should all be doing that anyways. It improves your business, your reputation, both with your customers and payment brands. You need that security. We need to ensure that and demonstrate to our customers, our partners in the world that we are secure and our systems are secure as well.
And this all comes because of the processing of payments with credit cards, right? Otherwise, I would not need to be PCI compliant.
Absolutely. It comes down to payment cards or credit card information that is either stored or transiting your environment. If you collect a payment with a credit card, then it's required that you maintain the security, that you comply with the PCI standard.
And then what happens if I am not compliant and there are some breaches of some credit card number or worse?
Well, this is really the flip side of it being an optional, you not being sort of an optional thing. Like this is the flip side of saying, okay, well, we're going to be secure and do the right thing. Well, if you're not secure, what can happen? Well, of course, there's loss of consumer confidence with when you get a data security breach. A lot of them are publicized very widely in the media. We've it almost seems like every week we hear of another high profile data security breach. That loss of confidence impacts not only your business today with your customers, but your merchants, your financial institution, your partners in the marketplace. So it really does have an impact on your ability to do business today and in the future.
Right, and it could happen then that, say, I got my credit card in the wrong hands because some company was not secure enough, and I start to see some charges in my credit card statement, or it affects my credit rating. I might get upset.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of impacts beyond the publicity, the poor customer perception when there is a data security breach. But there's also lawsuits. There's insurance claims, potentially canceled accounts. There's fines from the payment card issuers who we've committed to be compliant to PCI, and if we're not, then there are consequences, financial consequences to that, as well as government fines. So there's there's a lot of a lot of downside to this. It can really have a significant negative consequence for a business if they are found to be non-PCI compliant and they're processing credit cards.
Great. Well, that's good to know. Although it's not the kind of thing that we want to really hear, but that's the reality of where we live today, where we have a lot of payments are electronic payments, and a lot of companies get their revenue mostly from processing electronic payments. And well, there's people, there's thieves, just like there were thieves robbing banks with a handgun. Now there's thieves trying to get their hands into credit card numbers, for example. I would like
Absolutely.
to to tackle as well this with from the billing perspective, because at JBilling we are a billing vendor, and what we do is um, we have developed and we implement our billing solution. So I want to put PCI in the context of billing, mostly because billing is usually in charge of payment processing, which is where PCI really becomes very important or relevant. So I have a brief diagram here where we have my billing system with a few lines of code that I wrote for the occasion. By the way, this is not cut and paste; it's fresh code I just wrote for this presentation. And you can see here that the billing system talks to a variety of other systems and stores information. So where is it that PCI um, applies for a billing system? So I would get started with saying, look, the billing system itself and how it's accessed needs to be PCI compliant. PCI rules do apply to that system. The, how the passwords are managed, stored, what is a valid password, how often you need to change it, how and who can access the server, the operating system that billing system is running on, potentially running over a number of servers, need to be all secure, and it's an ongoing process to keep them secure.
Absolutely. And it seems that there's a lot of complex components there, but it's not just the technical either. It's also the people.
Right, because when you see the people part, the people do play a very important part when it comes to keeping the system secure. You might have the best billing system, the most secure database, and so on, but if the people that go manage these databases and systems, even they as users, not as security experts, not as system administrators, not as DBA administrators, but just those users that interact with the system, pull reports, create a new customer, and so on. Well, still PCI has a variety of rules for these people to follow, because they might come in contact with a system that handles credit cards. So
Mhm.
having your antivirus up to date, and the type of access to servers, password management, and so on, all that applies. Yeah.
Absolutely. But there's other components that the billing system connects to, isn't there?
Well, like the database is where eventually data is stored, and that data will likely have some um, something related to credit cards. If you are processing credit cards at one point in the month, like Billing does, so then how do we store that credit card? Or do we store it at all? Can we avoid storing that credit card? Or what parts of the credit card information do we store? Because we have the credit card number, but sometimes we can just store the four last digits. Sometimes we can avoid storing the credit card altogether. So the database plays a crucial part, and many rules of PCI will need to be considered when running a database for a billing system.
Absolutely.
Then we have the payment gateway. Well, this is the actual system that process payments, but the billing system has to trigger and instruct that to the payment gateway who needs to pay, how much, with the actual credit card information, at least the very first payment. So that information gets tokenized. So all that back and forth between the billing system and the payment gateway, all that needs to be carefully managed so it is PCI compliant.
And
And
there could be a lot of different PCI payment gateways too, correct?
that's right. We I just put a box there, but JBilling alone integrates with dozens of payment gateways, and each of them have their own take on what are they going to do with the credit card. Or are they going to store it with or not? The tokens, what kind, and the like. And it doesn't end there because we still have other systems that talk with the billing system. And a common one, for example, would be a customer portal. And often here is where the customer is, he or she is going to enter their credit card numbers, the credit card name, and so on. And that portal then will talk to the billing system to say, hey, I have a new customer, here's the credit card information. And because that is being transmitted to the billing system, here we have rules and security protocols to be followed.
So it's
um,
the communication between the portal and the billing system would also have to be very carefully looked at then.
Exactly, that communication, that integration, it's all affected by PCI. Even if your customer portal or your CRM, you would think, I'm not processing payments from here, I'm not storing credit cards, I'm not doing any of that, it's not the billing system, it's not processing payments. You still need to be aware of that handling of credit card information, how that eventually affects, or it's affected by PCI.
Well, what about if I was thinking, what if companies built their own billing system, and maybe an in-house system that they develop themselves? What would that affect their PCI compliance? Does that still apply, do you think?
Well, there you go. This is some classic line of thought, which is, well, we have developed our own in-house billing system, so I I have complete control of my billing system. I have the source code. I can change wherever I want. So I'm probably compliant. Um, I do not transmit the credit card numbers anywhere outside my organization. Everything is kept in house. Therefore, I am probably PCI compliant. And I'm afraid to say that that is not the case. Much on the contrary, actually, the likelihood is that you are not PCI compliant if you're running an in-house billing, unless you are compliant because you've done, you got through an audit of a PCI audit that was conducted by some audit firm that it knows PCI enough to do that type of audit. So no, I'm afraid that in-house billing doesn't solve the problem. It is likely the opposite, is going to make the problem worse because now you're responsible for everything around credit cards. The transmission, the handling, the encryption, the storage, all that is now in your hands.
And if the company, that's not their core competency, is running billing systems, then I imagine that's quite an additional cost to maintain not only the system but also compliance of that system year over year.
It's cost indeed, but it's the kind of cost that companies really don't want, because it's not that type the cost that will bring new revenue, will bring new customers. The best you'll get is customers not leaving or not getting upset because of a security problem. So yeah, it's outside the core business, is a distraction, um, is not what a telco company, for example, would like to spend headspace, budget, time, the resources doing.
Yeah.
So, if are you compliant? Probably you're not, and but PCI does apply to you. Um, and how
What
do
if
I
you don't
know?
know if you're not compliant? I was just gonna. I think we're both thinking the same thing. Like there's that question up there, isn't there?
Right. If you don't know, you are not. Um, it is it is not impossible. There might be one in a million where a company's ISO 9001, and it has all sort of great procedures, and it's very very secure culture in the company where they are already compliant, even though. But in that case, they would know about PCI, and they would have done they would have known that the all the PCI rules, and they would have brought some auditors in. So no, you're most likely not compliant. Now, Matt, let me ask you a question. If in-house an in-house bidding system is a classic that we've seen many times, but in your experience, you've seen many other misconceptions around PCI, misconceptions that um, bring at least they tend to kick the ball into the future, and really just making things more problematic down the road. Tell us a little bit about those misconceptions.
Well, there are several misconceptions about PCI. I think the first one is that PCI is solely a project, and when I think of a project, it's something that we start it, we do it, and then it's finished, and then I can put it behind me.
So
And I
it's
think as
over. When you're
yeah,
done,
it's
you're done,
over.
and yeah,
I'm done.
you don't need to worry about it anymore.
Absolutely, and I think as we've suggested already, while that initial work to bring an organization into compliance could be treated as a project, sure, it's important to understand and remember that maintaining compliance is an ongoing effort. New vulnerabilities emerge as software changes over time. Your business processes evolve and change, the way you do business and who you do business with. Your employees change, and also the PCI requirements themselves change year after year as typically in response to new technology and the like. So all of this means that PCI is not something that we do today and it finishes. It's an ongoing year over year
Right.
compliance effort.
And the people involved in that initial part, or you can call it the initial project, but also after that is done and you have to maintain PCI compliance. They are not just the techies, aren't they?
Yeah, no, that's true. We've talked a lot about the technical components of it, and it certainly is. There's a lot of technical considerations, but it's more than that. A lot has to be done to bring those systems into compliance, other than what the IT department might do. It's about building security into your business processes, your training programs, your hiring practices, and more. It touches almost every aspect of your business. It's
E-
not simply IT.
even HR, right? You said the hiring
Absolutely.
people. Okay.
The way you hire people, the way you validate people, the way you train people, it has a wide scope.
hmm And the other one, that it's around tokenization, because I remember, um, back like 10 years ago, and PCI already existed, but it was not as widely spread or understood. We thought at JBeating that by not storing the credit card numbers, um, by using the tokenization features of some um, payment gateways that were out there, we were basically, I wouldn't say PCI compliant, but because we are not storing that credit card number, then we don't need to be PCI compliant.
Yeah, it's a real common misconception that you're effectively exempt from compliance if you use
Hmm.
payment tokens, if you're not storing that data. And there's a number of reasons why that's not true. First of all, there's different forms of tokenization, and like any technology, each form carries its own specific threats and security concerns. But beyond that, and so we all on the same page, a token is really about when you submit that payment card to the payment gateway, instead of submitting the payment every single time, you're just referring to a token to make that payment. Well, of course, in that case, the billing system is using tokens to make payments. So because they are acting in place of the credit card, they themselves are in scope for PCI, with the storage and transmission of that data having to be secured and controlled accordingly. And now, of course, there's also the piece of important piece to recognize, and that is in order to get the token, you have to submit the credit card information to the gateway anyways. And so there must be credit card information at least once transiting your system. And that, of course, means you're requiring you be compliant as well.
That's right. Yes. So all that is so tokenization. I guess is helping. It's a piece of the puzzle, but it's not that silver bullet that will make an organization exempt, or it solves the whole PCI issue.
Absolutely. It is a good it's a good step. It helps, but PCI is compliance is much larger than a question of how a card is stored. It's about
Mhm.
your whole network. It's about your vulnerability management. It's managing access to your network. It's testing and monitoring. It's much more than simply, oh, I'm going to use a token.
Well, and we established that there's no silver bullet, and it's something we need to deal with. PCI compliance. It affects a wide. It affects pretty much everybody in the organization. Some people more than others. Some systems more than others. So it remains then to be answered. How much is that going to cost? It's something we gotta do. If, how much is going to hurt, Matt?
Yeah, and it can hurt, of course. It's not. Uh, this is not an undertaking that is um, inexpensive and simple, and as I say, a one-time thing that we can put behind us. The cost, of course, varies from widely from company to company. A large company might have uh, more costs than a smaller one. And it also depends upon whatever security and policies that you already have in place. And
Hmm.
so, if you are already, as you already mentioned earlier, if an organization is already very secure and has rigorous security standards in place already, there might not be as much of a gap. But it
Right.
really depends. And of course, that compliance is not just a one time thing, it's an ongoing year over year compliance, which means that the resource costs and effort to maintain that compliance also continues. So it's not a one time outlay, it's an ongoing operating expense that must be maintained and sustained by the organization.
And I can say from our
Sure.
experience at J Billing, with the with our own efforts to launch our PCI compliant hosted billing service, that the the cost was high. We had to, not just for the internal resources we had to dedicate, which of course is a cost because we rather have them doing something else. But we had to hire a variety of companies to help us get there. Consultants that are experts on PCI. We had to hire companies that would do a penetration test on our software to see if it is secure or not. Um, all sort of little pieces, and not so little that they all cost, and it's a it is it is much bigger. It's the tip of the iceberg when you think about let's do this project. Then things start to snowball as you realize, oh, now I have to do this extra step and this extra step. So
Exactly.
it is pretty
You know,
costly, isn't it?
it really is, and I think an important point to realize too is that, of course, with J billing, the billing systems and maintaining billing systems, that is the core business. And that is what J billing does. And so that outlay and those resources, that is what J-billing does. But thinking of the PCI compliance, if you are a telco business or some other business, that's not really your core business. You, by spending the resources and time on PCI, you're diverting a large number of resources and capital to your billing systems and compliance, rather than focusing that on bringing in new revenue. So it's a potentially a necessary evil, I suppose. Although, as I mentioned earlier, it's important to maintain security simply because it's the right thing to do. But if there's ways to leverage the core competencies of other companies to accomplish that goal, that makes good sense. And I think, Emiliano, you're going to mention a little bit just about that, about how J-billing can assist with this.
That's right. You see, at J Billing, that's what we do. We do billing, and billing nowadays. Billing 100 years ago was done by people, and there was no payment processing electronically or anything like that. But now, billing means payment processing, indeed, at least for a system like J Billing. And well, it is a whole service that involves the billing system on its own, with all the pieces to keep it running. So JBilling offers billing as a service. We host the billing system. We deal with where is it running. We use the Amazon Elastic Cloud, um, and we make sure that a provider that we're choosing for that hosting, it itself does that service in a PCI compliant way. But we bring also the necessary resources and skills, like a DBA that will make sure that database that is potentially storing some parts of a credit card information, to do that in a PCI compliant way, system administrator to keep all the different frameworks, operating systems, and the like of a large cluster of servers, all that secured. We deal with all that, and we don't mind doing this because that's our business. We are in the business of running billing software for our customers, and those customers then can basically relax as far as, is this service PCI compliant or not. It is. JBilling certifies that that's the case. We have um, the resources and the inclination really to get this done, and done well, and ongoing, because as you
Yes,
mentioned, Matt, it's not a one-time thing.
absolutely. And it's not an insignificant amount of resources that it takes to maintain the billing system. You know firsthand, right?
No, indeed. It's not insignificant to develop a billing system that's hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of lines of code, but also to keep it running secure, it's very costly as well. Those are two different things, and both need to be well managed. You, as a, say, you are a telco, you might purchase a license of a very good billing system. Even you could buy a license of JBilling and install it, and you could do that in a PCI compliant way. But from there, there's a big road to stay PCI compliant, and to make sure that everything around all those integrations, um, all those accesses from your people, all that is in a secure way. And also keep in mind that all the payment processing, when you consume billing as a service, the payment processing, all that happens completely outside your organization. It happens in JBilling. So JBilling, as a billing system, decides when and who needs to pay, and triggers that request to the right payment gateway, and that payment gets processed, and that communication between billing system and payment gateway happens completely outside the company that actually will get the money of the payment.
So conceivably, it would be possible for the credit card information and thus PCI requirements to be contained solely within JBilling.
Well, it is possible, if the initial gathering of the customer information, and in particular the credit card information, if all that happens in JBilling, which is possible, we have customer facing pages. Well, then that is then stored or handled by JBilling, and then the payment processing also happens within the JBilling side of the network, talking to payment gateways. So then the company that actually is the one serving the customer will not ever touch that credit card information, and in that case, PCI does not apply. Now, that is that's a, let's say, a perfect scenario. There are more likely scenarios in our experience where companies do have some interaction with customer, or the companies have some systems that do interact with the customers, and even when it comes to credit card information, typical of this is portals, where self-serve, that involves much more than billing. It involves all sorts of other things that the customer can do, including billing, and that then is integrated with JBilling. So in those cases, JBilling as a service, a hosted cloud JBilling, will be very beneficial when it comes to PCI, but it won't be the only piece that needs to be PCI. The moment that that credit card goes or is transmitted between that web portal and JBilling, well, that means that the company that owns that customer, well, they need to take care of PCI compliance for that part of the whole puzzle. JBilling helps, but it wouldn't be the only piece.
Right. So that company it would be a shared responsibility in that case. The company would be responsible for the security of the credit card information until it gets to JBilling, and then JBilling would take over after that.
That's right. That is right. And there are other scenarios that are worth exploring as well. Many of the payment gateways, or the institution that provided the payment processing capabilities, for example, PayPal, they offer that initial page to capture the payment information. So a company could be processing payments using PayPal and never getting that um, directly from the customer. And then JBilling can do the billing part and talk to PayPal and say, now customer John needs to process a payment for X amount of dollars, and so on. So um, there's a variety of scenarios there that simplify, and there's a wide variety of requirements as well of companies, that how comfortable they are taking credit card information or not, and how close they are to PCI compliance. What is for sure, though, is that a hosted enterprise solution such as JBilling will be a major help when it comes to securing payment processing as a general aspect, but indeed to be PCI compliant.
And I imagine that JBilling, of course, has the ability to make recommendations on which options is the path of least resistance when it comes to compliance as well, with things like PayPal and the options that you're mentioning.
Well, we've done it before. You've done it many times, Matt.
Yes, I
That
have
and,
indeed.
and the here eventually, when we offer a hosted billing system like JBilling, a cloud solution, then our interest is the long-term success, and that means a secure system, and that means having the right pieces in place. Now, I would like to tell everybody that we run out of time. I want to thank you very much, Matt, for your time today. This was very helpful. And thank you, everybody, for attending this webinar. If you have any other questions or you want to learn more about our cloud solution, just send us an email to sales@jbilling.com and we'll be happy to get back to you. Thank you. Have a good day.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Bye, Matt.